never knew it could be so hard. Living on the go. Sink or swim is all I know.
All right, so have a special guest right now. Karl is coming to us via Zoom, all the way from where exactly are you right now? City.
We're in Seattle, Washington, and it's separated into neighborhoods. So we're in the Greenwood neighborhood, kind of North Seattle.
Nice. Yeah, I do love it up there. It's been so long since we've been up there all the way in. You know, I think the last time we were close, we just were up in like the Woodland, Washington area, and not all the way up, not all the way north. But yeah, man,
Oh, yeah.
how have you been holding up in all this, Karl? How's this shelter in place been up there? Because I know that it's quite, at least the way the news portrayed it to us down here, they were like, man, if you think it's bad here, it's a little scarier up in Washington.
Well, it's kind of scary. It's weird. It's I think that because of it being a little bit more of a place where it was ground zero, it started off where it wasn't really taken seriously.
Right.
And I had a coworker that they have friends that work like in the medical field, and he came into work and he was like, well, Seattle just got up to 6 deaths from coronavirus, and it seemed so little.
Right.
And then he came back the next day and was like, it's up to 20.
Whoa.
And then the next day and was like, now it's up to 30 something. And
Wow.
So it was slowly increasing. It came on so quickly that I think, at least for me, it was hard to find my ground. You know, it was like, didn't know what to expect, wasn't sure like who was going to be affected. And it also just created this uncertainty of like, well, if it's spreading that quickly, like how is it and what do we need to do to make it better and make it so that we're helping and not contributing to the problem, you know?
Right.
So the company that I work for, Annie's Art and Frame, we almost immediately started like sanitizing everything. We were constantly wearing gloves. We never got to the point where we wore masks, but that wasn't a requirement.
Right.
And we were just doing everything that we could to be able to like make sure that if we were spreading anything, you know, at least we were like cleaning and being as diligent as we could.
Right.
And we did that for a couple weeks, and then they eventually did the whole shelter in place order. And so here we are, you know?
Yeah.
So now my girlfriend and I, you know, we basically just stay at home and try and avoid social media a lot.
Yeah.
Which is hard because, I mean, even like with you and I have your phone number, but, you know, I still love seeing the updates from people like this is what's happening with family,
right,
and seeing videos and pictures and things like that. Right. So it's not easy to also have to filter through a lot of like, oh, there's conspiracies about this, or like, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. This is like the next Black Plague. Right. And like, we're all going to die. And like having that all mixed in with the stuff that I'm like, I just came because I want to see how people's lives are going, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So it's weird. I feel like that's being the most descriptive, is that it's hard to put any single word on it. But
just odd. It's just so odd. Yeah.
Yeah. Never in my life did I expect that they would say you need to go and stay in your house indefinitely.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it's odd. It's strange. It's
Yeah.
slowly creating new normals.
Sure. Well, yeah, and you've been able to create some norms in the just being around the house.
Yeah. Probably the thing that went out the window that shouldn't have is like a regular sleep schedule. We kind of just like, I don't know, we do what we need to, and we'll realize like, oh my God, it's 3 a.m.
Woo.
And then like, okay, well, let's go to bed now. I mean, not having kids, it makes a huge difference for this whole thing, you know. It's just us and our cranky cat. But I mean, you had mentioned earlier having this long list of things and feeling somewhat overwhelmed with, you know, how am I going to get to all this stuff? And I felt that way too, like right from the gate. Like, oh man, how am I going to, I've got so many projects. I'm always thinking like, oh, I got to do this. And lately it's been like kind of, again, like what you said, just take one thing and then work on it, and then take another thing and then work on it. So I think it's turned from where it's uncomfortable with this new way of living to now it's somewhat exciting, because it's like, oh man, I can look forward to tomorrow. I'm going to, you know, be working down in the wood shop and you know, making a wizard wand, or like making a bookshelf for a friend. And then I'm going to be able to see that friend too, you know?
Right.
So yeah, it's challenging, but now it feels like a good challenge rather than like a just completely overwhelming challenge.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely, like I said, that first week or so, 2 weeks pretty much, just like, I need to get on some type of routine here, because, you know, scrambling from project to project was just disheartening at best. It was like, and there was that feeling of too, like, well, if I start this, then I got to finish it today too. And some of these projects are just not that way. For example, just purging the house. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Like that one, that is just like a monster job all in itself. And it's like, okay, you say you want to purge the house. How about you start with one drawer in the kitchen? Just that one drawer, and get that one drawer done. And then you pat yourself on the back when you're done, have a coffee, and maybe go after the next one. But maybe not. Maybe go for a bike ride.
Yeah.
You know? So it's been a lot easier taking on that kind of approach once I was able to settle down from my high horse of like, I'm gonna get everything done. So all right, so for those of you who may not know, Karl is a guitarist among many other things, songwriter, all kinds of musical talent wrapped up in that body. And what I want you to tell us a little bit about how, I guess, really how we came together to doing music, because other people, I've had the question of, hey, how did you come into the band? But that question does not work with Karl, because Karl asked me to be in the band. So take it away, Karl.
Well, dude, it's funny because I totally forgot about that. Trying to remember. So I guess if we're going to go back to the first memory of like, where did Into the Pacific start? I was playing music with Nikki Bedius and Joel Landis and a mutual friend of ours, Patrick Young. We were all kind of going to the same church at that point, and they used to do this thing at that church called the Hangout. And it was I think the church was called like Hillside Church or something, because it was in the Hayward Hills, like just below Cal State Hayward. And I will always call it Cal State Hayward because that's what it is.
It's what it is.
So yeah, Joel and Nikki and Patrick, and then Patrick, I think he graduated, and so he had to focus on school, and so he played bass, and Joel and Nikki and I were talking, and Joel was actually the one. He was like, dude, I think if we could get Esteban to play with us, that would be the way to go. And so we went to the church that you were going to. I think it was called Elmhurst at that time.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't remember. It must have been like a youth event or something, because we all got to just set up our instruments on stage. And like the only thing that was already set up, I think, was like the bass cab and the drum set.
Yeah.
And we just played through random sheet music songs. And then I want to say the youth pastor, Jim, at the time was like, hey, why don't you guys just like play music for our youth events? And so it was like, well, hey man, you want to do that? Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then that kind of meld into like, hey, really like to do some original stuff, and like Nikki's writing stuff.
Yeah.
So why don't we do that? And that was how, what did we call ourselves?
ICQ.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, I still have some of those. Still have some of those recordings somewhere. If I don't, Russ has them for sure. He'll pull them out.
Oh, dude. Oh my God. Hold on. Now that I'm thinking about that, hold on, because I think I have a little surprise. Let me see, because I had it in here for a while.
Oh man,
and I came across it recently.
The TWEED case, man, is still alive.
No, check this out. I hope that this. Yes. You have to remember this.
I think. Oh my gosh, the photo shoot.
I mean, look at you.
Yeah.
Big ballin'.
Oh yeah, the Echo shirts. Yes. Good stuff, man. Yeah, that's ICQ days in its heyday. Like we already had plenty of shows under our belt at that point. We had at least a 30-minute set. Like we were rolling.
Yeah. Because we played quite a few times at the church. We played at a couple coffee shops. Yep. And dude, I remember the last show that we played with ICQ. A lot of reasons, because it was the day that the band broke up.
Oh man.
And it was also pretty much the day that Nikki and I broke up, because we were dating at the time. Very Fleetwood Mac-esque, right?
Yeah. Wow. So it's a lot of heaviness in one day.
Yeah. And the thing that was so crazy was we played at a park, and that show was so fun. It was like one of the most stressful ones, but it was so fun. And afterward, I felt like super hyped. And that's basically when Nikki was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, just can't. And trying to remember, I honestly think from there, we just all kept playing music at that church.
Yeah. Because you were pretty much fully, I was the oldest, I was the old man in the group. So I was technically one of the youth leaders by that point. you use that term very loosely. And then like you guys were in it. Like, I don't even think Jonathan, that first, that when that picture was taken, I don't even know if he's 12 years old there or 13. I think he's 12 maybe. And so like the rest of, that group was still technically like high school age. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
so
was
like
no older than like 16, 17.
right. So you see, so I was like, okay, well, in the midst of that, the reason, one of the biggest like milestones for ICQ for me was that began my like songwriting in a much more serious fashion than I ever had before, where I was like,
Oh, definitely.
where I was actually composing like parts of a song. Where I was hearing like, this is what I hear guitar doing, and this is what I hear drums doing, and this is what I hear the vocals doing, and then like trying to, put that all on paper, which, my music theory is so limited that like I think all my chord charts that I tried to come up with were wrong half the time. But then, we kind of we all could play by ear very well. So we were like, oh, that doesn't sound right, but this does. Okay, keep that. And like, yeah, I remember sitting with Nikki and like, hey, I wrote this song. And of course I wrote it in my key. So then I'm trying to transpose it to a Nikki key, which would always land us in some flat or sharp. I was like,
oh, yeah.
oh, Karl's going to hate this. I mean, unless he capos, and Jonathan was the one that was going to really hate it on keys. But yeah, it was like, that was a milestone for me anyway, to like begin writing. And I have a pretty distinct memory of that last show. I also agree, like there was something special about that day. Maybe it was the fact that we really rocked out our instrumental to the Yes cover that we used to do.
Yeah. Dude, yeah.
Maybe it was just that got me super stoked that day, because we just nailed it. But then, like you said, to kind of come down off of that high was pretty rough. And then I want to say we met up at your house within the week. I feel like I remember that me, you, Joel, and John sitting in your room at your house, somebody's room at somebody's house, not mine, and saying, okay, well, what are we going to do? And just like go around the room. What do you want to do? Do you like, do you want to keep playing music with this group, or do you think, yeah, that was fun, it's had its run, and let's let it go? And we each basically took our turn and said, we still want to do music, but we have no lead singer. And so then was the push from, I don't know who, I'm guessing Jonathan, because Jonathan would always speak up at the most, he's quiet until he's not. And
right.
I feel like he would always be the challenger. John's always been the one to challenge me. And I feel like in that moment, it may have been him that was like, well, you can sing. Whoever this person was said, you've been teaching Nikki all these songs. I've heard you singing the songs to her. So obviously you can sing. So then it was just at that point, then it was just a battle of like, well, am I going to really pick up the pace? Because I didn't feel like a worthy vocalist, and I felt like an even less worthy vocalist trying to play bass at the same time. I felt like so fumbly. So, but all that really, like, if things don't happen like that, I'm not sure. I was very happy and content to be a bass player or a drummer. Like, no need to sing. Maybe I'll help out writing. I'm happy being the background guy. And then when all that went down, it just kind of just happened. just went that direction. And then, yeah, you basically were, you had come from your other church to I assume we were Community of Grace at that point. Maybe not. Maybe we were still Elmhurst. But then there was a lot of different like worship nights and stuff happening at the church. And at that point, that was when we were able to get our foot in the door and like take our little 4-piece band and do stuff like on a Friday night or a Saturday night, not on a Sunday morning per se. But Rodney gave us the okay to try out one of the an evening of a worship night or whatever. So yeah, it does blur a little bit together to me, but the events around that last show and right thereafter are all, at least I feel like I remember them. I may have created some reality, but yeah, I know that I definitely was not interested in being a lead singer at that point. Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. And yeah, whoever it was that pushed you, you fought it hard.
Yeah.
In fact, we just had a song and we were like, just sing it. And it was like probably the first time that I saw you like roll your eyes and grumble. And I was like, oh man, this may not be good. But then we all heard you sing and we were like, why don't you sing more often? Like, that's really not what we're missing as a singer, because you could do vocals. Like, like, why aren't we just moving forward?
Right. And I'm sure my excuse was, well, I can't play and sing at the same time.
Yeah, it was.
I'm
it was
sure
totally that.
It was, I'm sure
Yeah.
that's exactly what came out of my mouth. And I think
Jonathan, he must have like either picked up my guitar or we just abandoned the guitar. And I was like, I can play bass, man. Like we've got something that's like a rhythm and a melody section. Right. So you got no excuses. Like, just sing and let's hear it.
Right. Yeah. And man, that push, one of the things in all of these talks that I've been having is finding out the bigger thing to this entire journey was not the music itself, but the friendships that were within all those musical escapades. The music served as a tool for our friendships, and vice versa. Like the friendship then, of course, influenced our writing and our performances and everything we end up doing. So it's this kind of like everything, it's just self-feeding, but the relationship was key. And those moments where we were able to push each other like that, that's, I can count on one hand probably really how many friends I've had that could even talk to me that way, where they could talk to me in such a challenging fashion, but me not just get offended by it, but actually hear it and take it to heart and say, there's something to this. There's something to it. And music was the kind of the gateway to that relationship happening, and to the willingness, I guess, to take risk with each other in all that, in those friendships. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that, for not only for you guys bringing me into it, but for the friendship is still the most valuable piece of everything that happened back then. Cool.
Oh yeah. I mean, I honestly still think about that on a regular, and it can break down into like so many different segments. Like when I'm talking to somebody about playing music and they're like, oh, well, who have you played music with? And I'm like, dude, I really miss playing music with Stellan and John and with Danny and Nick and Russ. Like, with you in particular, yeah, if we think back on it, we've played music together for like over 15 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
On and off, of course. It's
right.
Now that we're in different states, but you know, then you take the fact that it's like me and you were not close friends when we started the band.
Right.
And now I consider you one of my best friends, you know?
Yeah. Likewise.
Those types of things that I like couldn't have planned at all.
Right.
And yeah, it's mind blowing to think about that and to think just the progression of it, you know?
Right. It's like, you can't plan that. You can't, the directions, the twists and turns. Yeah. Can't really plan that out. So yeah, so there's that's essentially the beginnings of Into the Pacific, but just under other names, and it evolved with other names even after that.
Even though the night seems to never